Hi, everybody, and welcome to another comics loving, graphic novel centered edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I am glad to be having what is my morning coffee. I think we're in the same time zone, but my morning coffee with author and artist Tim Probert. Tim, thank you for jumping on and joining this morning.
Yes, yes. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I also have my morning coffee. So
Yeah,
perfect.
wonderful, wonderful. I always feel a little bit brocaw when I end with this morning, this morning, this morning.
Yes.
But yeah, yeah. So folks out there probably know you for a duology called, at least right now, it's a duology. Well, that's one thing
Hmm.
I'll ask is future plans, but it's called Lightfall, which is just beautiful and wonderful and imaginative. And I discovered it last summer because I'm one of those
Hmm.
people who explores graphic novels and I teach. And so I was really excited to come across it. So before we take it way, way back to talk about your author origins, anything that you want to share about Lightfall, which again is currently two books.
Yes, and thank you for that.
Hmm, hmm.
Yeah, Lightfall is for those who haven't read it, it's a fantasy adventure set in this world called Urba, where there is no sun, and there's these lights that float above all the cities that kind of casts light and warmth down. And this character of B, who's a young girl, meets this guy called Cadwallader, who's a Galdurian, which are these ancient lost race of giant, like kind of frog-looking dudes. And her grandfather goes missing, and these two happen to meet, and they go off to look for him, and things kind of go from there and unravel pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah, but I'll also ask about the medium that you use as far as the tools and process, but it's really a very, very attractive book. And as I said, lots of imagination. There's a pig wizard,
Hmm.
all sorts of wonderful things. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So what got you down this path of comics creating and authoring? What was the thing that grabbed you as a young reader and creator?
Sure, sure. So, I read comics when I was younger. It was, your superhero things and stuff like that, but I didn't know them that well growing up. And I think the big thing for me was discovering Bone in college.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I read Jeff Smith's Bone, and then right after that, I read Nausicaa by Hayao Miyazaki, and those two books like blew my mind and like
Hmm,
really
hmm.
opened me up to this whole world and this whole medium that I hadn't really experienced yet. And like having these long form fantasy Lord of the Rings style like epic stories told in comics with amazing visuals that were very different from stuff I had seen. I know it was all going on in comics, I was just like out of the loop, I
Right,
guess.
right.
So that was kind of like the first little inkling of like, oh wow, I'd love to do something like that. um, and then I went to school for painting actually. So I learned drawing and painting school, and then I went to animation, which is where I work today. I'm an art director at an animation studio. But the comics were always kind of lingering in the back of my head, and I would like do small stuff on the side. And I would illustrate books, middle grade novels usually,
Hmm.
freelance. And then from there, it kind of like I had gotten to know some people in the publishing industry, and the designer that I was working with on those books became an art director and then became an editor in graphic novels. And he asked if I had an idea, and I pitched Lightfall, and it just kind of went from there.
Love it, love it, love
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Now, there's a whole connection, a couple of connections there between people that do animation and then find their way into graphic novels. So,
Mhm.
any works that you want to tip off in the world of animation that folks might know about or want to check out?
Oh, as far as like some animated projects or
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I've worked on at my studio, we do a lot of like short form animation in like all different mediums. So we'll do 3D full CG stuff, we'll do 2D hand drawn, kind of like everything in between.
Oh, nice, nice.
um yeah, yeah, we do a lot of like commercials usually, are kind of the staple, but then other things outside of there. We're doing a bunch of stuff for Pokemon right now, which is
Oh,
which is pretty
nice.
fun.
Yeah.
Getting to kind of like play with those classic characters that everybody knows. um yeah. Yeah, but animation and comics, yeah, you're right. There are a lot of people who work in the animation industry that also like do their own comics and graphic novels on the side, which is nice. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah. The other piece there that's kind of community or thread, there are a whole group of people who've been on the show that talk about Jeff Smith and Bone
Hmm.
and just how pivotal that book series was. I just actually met him at a con this past weekend. It's such a
Nice.
delightful, such a
Yeah.
kind person. So that's also just a testament to the sort of legacy of creativity that's out
Hmm.
there. So great to see Lightfall and your work being born from this place as well. And then, of
For
course,
sure.
Miyazaki.
Yes, yes, and he's another one that's left a legacy of thousands of artists who really admire and look up to him, and all the beautiful works that he's created because he's such a legend.
Yeah, yeah. So also curious about the genre, fantasy, which I am a fan of. I love,
Mhm.
and I love how you can kind of step outside of reality, but then you're also linked to reality. So what is it about fantasy that allows you to tell the stories that you want to tell?
Totally. I think it's what you just said. The One of my favorite things about it is that you could push it as far away from our world as you want, or you could keep it as close as you want. And you can kind of push and pull depending on the story you're telling or what you need to happen. Um, like in Lightfall, developing this world where there was no sun was just kind of fun to like, how does this work? And like, what happens
Hmm.
outside of these areas? And like, how are days counted? And like, I don't know, all that world building stuff is just fun for me.
Yeah.
Um, but then what I wanted to do with the book is tell a relatable story, like have very relatable characters that are put into the fantasy world, which, so that the main character B deals a lot with anxiety issues and anxiety attacks and panic and fear and stuff, which, feels very, hopefully to the reader, very relatable, but then in this like world that's like totally fantastical and out of control. So I love that kind of that back and forth. Um, and yeah, when it's fantasy, you get to draw whatever you want, which is also just
Yeah.
makes it fun to do.
Yeah. What was the process like of sort of building that world? Do you have? I've talked with people that have like a mountain of mythology that they
Hmm.
sort of build up, and so we're all sort of seeing the tip of the iceberg in that world. And then I've talked with people who sort of start and invent and just sort of go with the flow of whatever comes up in the creating world.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a little bit of both for me. I think I did enough world building at the beginning of the first book to understand enough to write the story.
Hmm.
But then as I've gotten further into the story, it is a little bit of like putting the tracks in front of the train sometimes where I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, how does this work? I'd have to like pause writing and really think about stuff. And then sometimes I'll take breaks and go into like ancient history and write things about the gods and legends just so that like I have it there and in case it comes up.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then sometimes I'll just draw something that I think is like, I don't know, like a cool little statue, and then I'll be like, oh, what is that statue? Let's figure it out, and like maybe it can actually tie into things, and maybe it's something important.
Oh, love
Um,
it, love it.
yeah, so it's kind of it's like a kind of back and forth for me, where I don't have the biggest lore Bible, but I have like a little bit of one, and then I just constantly add to it as I go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that's really cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that's the world building is fun, but I try to not let it um take control of the story or like
Mhm.
overwhelm the story or the characters. And so, you get excited and you put too much of it in sometimes, and you're like, okay, wait a second, this is this is kind of like making things a little more complicated than they need to be, but this is all the fun stuff. But it needs to like go away. But the fact that it was like there or knowing it's it helped the world a little more real or a little more like lived in and stuff. So
That
yeah.
so Zoom just jumbled you. Can you say that last part again? I'm sorry. I'll edit
Oh,
that so it
sorry.
comes through.
Yeah, yeah. So the you don't want the world building to get in the way of the story. So it's it all ends up in there at some point, and then I end up editing a lot of it out. But the fact that it's there helps the story feel more real and lived in, and like there's still hints of it that get left behind,
Yeah,
but hopefully
yeah,
don't overwhelm. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So currently, are there more Lightfall plans? Are you exploring other worlds? I always like to share time for upcoming titles, works in progress that you can talk about that are not covered by the secrecy of the publishing world. And then anything else that you'd like to mention as far as events or anything like that.
Sure, sure. My big project, I'm working on the third book. So there is a third book in Lightfall
Nice.
coming. And then there should be a few more after that. So, still working out the details, but I want it to be a complete story, that feels like it, so I have an end in mind, and I'll get there. But yeah, so I'm working on the third book. It's called The Dark Times. And I'm in the midst of drawing pages. And yeah, that's the only big thing I have going on at the moment. It's a little all consuming.
Oh, I bet. Immersing yourself in that world. And I was also going to ask about your style. Is painting something
Mhm.
that you bring in to the page, or is there a different
Yeah,
way?
yeah. So I all of my pages are drawn paper and pencil.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so I do like these rough pencils and a red color pencil, and then I do my like inking with just a mechanical pencil, mechanical graphite.
hmm
And then all of those are scanned in and brought into Photoshop where I do the painting.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so and then from there the painting I try to bring some of the stuff I learned back when I used to oil paint. So some of that filters through, and then I do a lot of I like make textures out of paint and then scan them in and kind of like layer them in and move them around. So it trying to get as much of a traditional hand drawn kind of feel into it as I can.
I love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, yeah. So it carries through.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. Absolutely. So final question, unless there's anything that I've missed, what do you hope readers take away from the world of Lightfall, as they visit this world, which I would recommend. I would recommend it for young readers. I know that it's aimed at young readers as like a marketing thing, but then again, I mean, I'm middle-aged and I found it really enjoyable. So
That's great to hear. I do hope that anybody any age could read it. I love younger readers reading it, but I also love just anybody
yeah,
enjoying it.
yeah.
So that's great. I hope that people have a good time in the world. I hope they enjoy it and maybe connect with it, relate to it, and I hope that they want to read it again and go back in and maybe see some detail that they missed, or like read it from a different perspective and notice some different things in the background and stuff like that. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
hope it's a place that they people want to keep going back to, I guess. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And again, I would recommend it. I definitely recommend it, and looking forward to book three, as well as the sprawling world and the epic continuation. So,
Hmm.
Tim, thank you so much. Anything that I missed that you want
Yeah.
to make sure to share? I think I see some sketching behind you there, which is very
Yes.
cool to
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of yeah, sorry. We moved recently, so I'm up in a loft space temporarily. That's like kind of a huge mess. So,
Oh no, no, not at all. Not at all. It's totally fine. I get that. A lot of people ask if this background behind me is real, and
yeah.
it's not because we've moved a few times too, and
Yeah.
I love books, but I can't imagine carting this many books around with me just for the sake of
Uh,
it. So,
Absolutely. The amount of books that we moved this time was like unreal. We were like,
oh
why
yeah,
do we have so many books?
because we love them. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, and looking forward to sharing this with people that are out there listening and watching.
Cool. Thank you so much. I hope they enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thanks.